We are delighted to be joined by Dawain Atkinson. Hello and welcome to Exposit the Word.
Hey, how's everybody doing? Glad to be here.
We're good. Dwayne, you're normally on the other side of a mic, so does it feel a bit weird being interviewed?
It does, man. It does. I'm usually the interviewer, not often the interviewee, but you know what? I do love interviews, so I definitely take advantage of any chance I can to do it.
Well, you're a very good interviewer, so you're making me slightly nervous. Like, I feel like I'm kind of interviewing my mentor here, you know?
well, I'm honored to be listed as that, but I'm sure you'll do a great job.
Yeah, sure. Just don't be too critical with a review after, right?
Right. I got you.
Yeah. So before we talk about your podcast and everything that you're doing online, let's just talk about, yourself to begin with. Tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and also how you became a Christian.
Sure. So I'm a husband of one, father of four. I tell people my children are the picture of grace. My oldest is adopted. My son was out of wedlock before marriage, and then my two babies came 5 years after me and my wife got married. We tried for 5 years, and God finally blessed us with it, man. And so I think it's a picture of the gospel and the grace of God. My children definitely pride and joy of my life. How I became a Christian, man, we have to take it all the way back to North Carolina. There's a little town called Turkey, North Carolina, not to be confused with Istanbul. There's an actual small town in North Carolina, eastern North Carolina, called Turkey. Very rural area. I grew up on a farm. My parents were Christians, both in the church. All I knew was church. Well, I know when I think they got pictures of me walking for the first time I was in church. My parents cleaned the church on Friday night, so I was always in the church. But I was in the church, but Christ was not in my heart. So I grew up, just knowing about church, but not knowing God. Played drums for the church, and so I would do all the sinning I wanted to do on Saturday night and then jump behind the drums Sunday morning, thinking that was good enough, and also was an athlete. And so God, just his providence, man, used my pride. I had a lot of pride being a musician and an athlete and a womanizer. And he used that thing to break me down to my knees, man. The thing that he knew I had the most, I guess, I was very prideful about being able to be a player or whatever. And so one night, got caught up between the two ladies I was interested in at the time, and that was the thing that broke me. That's the thing that God used, and I rolled over out of my bed onto my knees and said, Lord, I'm making a mess of my life. Please come into my heart. And I wish that I could say that when I got up, everything was happily ever after. Unfortunately, being an athlete and a musician, the first place I turned to find, quote unquote, the best of Christians was TV, and I turned to TBN. And that took me on a journey into charismania, the charismatic movement, into the New Apostolic Reformation, because I assumed that because you were on TV, that meant you were the best at what you were doing. So I was saved, but I went into false teaching and false doctrine, probably about 7 or 8 years worth, climbing the ranks, being a part of a staff of a multi, $1 million church, one of those mega churches, being a part of the staff, being licensed, air quote, as an apostle, just making big moves, man. And I began to see the ugly side of it, man. I began to see the manipulation. I began to see how everything was about money. You give money to get this, or you give money to get that. And that led me on another journey to this isn't right, man. Money can't be the motive. If it's a real move of God, like you say it is, then money can't dictate that. And then I began to look at apologetics, and just to try to come up with answers. That's one reason why I went to apologetics. And so when I did that, I actually was a hardcore, fundamental King James only, one of those guys.
Yeah.
You know, and I had a friend of mine, that coworker that was actually a Presbyterian pastor. I didn't know it at the time, and I was talking junk about Calvinism and Reformed theology. He was like, "Hey, you want to learn about it?" And I'm thinking like, "Okay, yeah, I'm gonna learn about it so I can flip it and tell you how it's not biblical."
Yeah.
And he took me in his office, man, and every day on his lunch break, I would go in his office, and we would literally walk through the Westminster Confession. And when it was all over, I, pretty much kind of just turned around and say, "Hey, I believe this, man. I'm Reformed. I believe in the Reformed doctrine."
Wow.
And then he gave me resources. He gave me, he told me about Ligonier. He told me about Grace to You, True for Life. And I just started just devouring that stuff, man, because I'm an audio person. I love to listen. Like, I'm not the biggest reader, but I can listen all day. And so I just started just devouring that stuff, man. And then I discovered podcasts, and I was like, wait a minute, you could do this and have fun. I think I can bring something to the table. I might not be the smartest guy, but I can interview smart people.
Yeah.
And so that was the birth of the B.A.R podcast, man. And 5 years later, that developed into the B.A.R network with 3 shows that have over 300,000 downloads. One of them just hit 500K, and other shows on the network that just produce phenomenal content, man. So that's my story, man. From humble beginnings to humble endings.
So many questions. Okay,
come on with them. I got time.
So let's go back to the beginning. You mentioned that you was mixed up with this prosperity type church, right? So you mentioned New Apostolic Reformation. Just quickly, in case anybody's not familiar with that term, just sort of break that down. What is the New Apostolic Reformation, and what kind of churches are involved in that today that the listeners might be familiar with?
Sure. So New Apostolic Reformation was, I think it was originally coined by C. Peter Wagner. C. Peter Wagner claimed he received a revelation from God that the office of apostle needed to be reinstated. In the early 80s, everybody was an evangelist. To the mid 80s to the 90s, then prophets, people claiming to be prophets and say prophecies. And then between the mid 90s up to now, apostles has kind of, you didn't hear those titles before, back in the 70s and 80s. People weren't saying that. So C. Peter Wagner coined that, said he was God gave him that revelation. He's the apostle of apostles. And so the New Apostolic Reformation has crept its way in pretty much almost all denominations besides some, solidly biblical ones, just because of the package with charismania, being charismatic and chasing after fame. So you could find, if any church or non-denominational church that say that they have an apostle, or the pastor calls himself apostle, they are most likely part of the New Apostolic Reformation movement. Or if they don't even claim the title of apostleship, but they also talk about the fivefold gift and operating in the fivefold gift. This is apostle, prophet, evangelist, teacher, pastor. Pastor, we all know that's something that's current, but if you hear people use that dialogue, a new dimension, or new wineskin, and they, all of that kind of stuff. That's kind of a telltale that they're in the New Apostolic Reformation movement. And
is the prosperity gospel really tied into this as well, Dwayne?
Yes. Oh, yes. Prosperity, because it goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
Because see, when I say charismatic, I lump in prosperity, because it's all. I think they're all intertwined. And the way and what makes it go hand to hand is prosperity. Talks about decreeing and declaring, and then the New Apostolic saying you have apostolic authority to decree and declare, and so it all ties in together.
So word of faith, this is speaking things into existence and binding things up, right?
Sure. That's correct.
Okay, so I picked up on the point that you said that at some point you became an apostle. I'm very interested as to hear how that happened.
Everybody is.
was this on a business card? Like how did this happen?
Oh man, so back to C. Peter Wagner, he ordained apostles under him. One of them was Chuck Pierce, which some people may be familiar with him because he so-called had an prediction for COVID-19, which was a farce. But anyway, Chuck Pierce ordained his own set of apostles in his church, and those apostles, a couple out of Dallas, Texas, connected with me and my wife, and then we took a course, pretty much over the phone course, where we would call in, and we had workbooks, and we had books we needed to read, and we had to write papers. And then when it was over, at our graduation or coronation, we were supposed to preach a sermon, and then God would tell the apostles what fivefold ministry gift we have. And so apparently me and my wife, according to him, had the apostolic ministry gift. And so we received a certificate, and we received some kind of sash to go over your shoulder, and just like that, we were apostles.
That is exactly how it happened in the Bible.
Said nobody.
Yeah. So what happened? So really interesting story. So during your lunch break, you were speaking to this guy, and you were trying to prove him wrong. What happened because obviously I'm assuming that you were still going to this NAR church. What kind of happened in the interim? How did you kind of break away from that? How easy was it to do that?
So mentally, I was already gone. Like I said, because I had got to a point where I was tired of sin, and so I was already like mentally gone from the church. Just kind of going because that's what you do. You go to church. That's where I grew up. And so I just was. It really had already happened. Seeing the manipulation, seeing the money, and then seeing people decree and declare, and nothing happen. Seeing people, lay hands, and nobody's getting healed. Seeing all of that, I was already in a place where I was like, okay, this is not right. I need to find something that's right. And so when I was sitting with him, it pretty much everything that he was saying was confirming everything that I grew up knowing, but never knew how to put it in words. Yeah.
So when you was a part of that movement, how would you kind of excuse, like, there'd be people obviously giving prophecy and it didn't come true. There would have been all sort of, people speaking healings into existence and it wouldn't happen. How did you kind of reconcile that in your mind when you were seeing these things happen, and how was your friend sort of dealing with that as well?
So the way that they look at it, which is no scriptural basis. Let me make that clear. The way that they look at it is, we the verse where we all hear or see in part. You don't see the whole picture. You're not going to get it right all the time. And so that's the verse that they use out of context. If maybe we didn't hear God correctly, or maybe, we didn't hear it just right, or maybe the manifestations in heaven, it just need to come down. You need to keep having faith so to come down. It already happened, but you need to believe, so they will explain it away. They sure will. So, but no, that's one of the ones that they would say. Because I would question it too. I'm inquisitive like that myself. And then, when they come with that explanation, it never really sat right. But it's just kind of like one of those things. Like, okay, what else do I have? You know?
Yeah. With such a focus on cash and money, what was it like being on the inside? Because we spoke to Hinn a few weeks back, and I was really interested to sort of ask him that. Obviously, his uncle's Benny Hinn, and I wondered what it was like behind the scenes. I wonder if there was like a conscious effort to keep up the facade and kind of. Sure. So what was it like backstage for you, Dwayne?
The same. It's same. You definitely have to keep the facade, man. You have to maintain the attention. Mega pastors were thinking about analytics and stats before the internet took off. When they preached this sermon, this was a result. When we did the offering like this was a result. With money being the measuring mark. So the difference between me and Benny, and not Benny, but Costi, which Costi is a good friend of mine.
Yeah.
Costi actually got a chance to enjoy the money. I just got a chance to help strategize and look at it. I didn't get a chance to enjoy it. Costi was riding on a 22s and a Hummer.
Yeah.
I didn't have that luxury.
Yeah.
I was part of the strategy and everything, but I did not reap the benefits. I mean, I was on staff, and I got paid. They paid me about an hour, but I didn't have the hotel room with the private pool like Costi and all that.
It's because you was an apostle with a small a. You needed to get promoted, Dwayne. That's what the problem was there.
Right. Yeah, I needed to be a grand poobah apostle, I guess.
That's right. Without making this sound like I'm stalking you, Dwayne, I've heard on another interview you talk about a meeting with Benny Hinn. Tell us about that. What happened?
Yeah. No, that's not stalking. It's on YouTube. I'm sure everybody's seen it by now. So with Benny Hinn, he came to town. It was a big ordeal. And so I'm gonna tell you this, and then I want to tell you another part of that same story. So I was on stage. I was in the band. And, he did his thing. He waved his hand, and I saw people fall out. He waved his hand at us, the band, and, you just learn. It's learned behavior, man. You fall over or lay over, or you lay down, and you feel like the weight is on you, and that's what he do. But it wasn't like I did not feel actual. And what was interesting is at the time, the praise and worship leader, he brought him up, and he grabbed his hand and waved his hand, and then people fell and told him he had the same quote unquote anointing. So it was definitely an interesting meeting. Like I said, got to be up there and see it firsthand. But I do want to tell you this, man, because again, on staff, there was a video, like a wide shot of the whole service. And so I used to watch the DVDs, help with titles and stuff. And so with the wide shot, in the back of the building, when Benny Hinn was there was a line of probably about 40 or 50 hospital beds, wheelchairs. I mean, just people just lined across the back of the building. And when the service was over, because, I have to watch it all the way to the end, I noticed that when the service was over, people were leaving one by one. Every one of those hospital beds, every one of those wheelchairs turned around and went back out. And I thought back then, like, how is this man claiming to be a real healer? And there's people in the back of the room that left the same way that they came. So, that was something that happened that night.
Yeah. Did something happen? Am I right in thinking that there was a staged, they asked a couple of people to run up to almost choreograph a sort of
but that wasn't Benny Hinn. No, that was a regular service.
Okay, right.
That was a regular Sunday. It was a stage thing. It was one of the money making sermons is singles and relationship, and so it was like we need this guy. When I say this, to run up and give an offering or stand up and say amen, whatever. And they staged it out. And then my wife actually reminded me of another instance where we saw the pastor, me and her. I think we were engaged. We saw him at the gym, and she introduced me to him and everything. And this is when I first moved there. And then he got up the Sunday of a big offering and said, I met this young lady, and she had a nice looking young man, and she said she gave her seed for a husband, and he blessed her with a husband. And like all the people ran up together.
Mate. Wow.
But she didn't say any of that, 'cause I was standing right there.
Yeah. Wow. So you was literally the harvest.
I was the harvest, man. Yes, sir.
Wow.
But I'm a good one, so
that's
works.
That's true.
She lucked up.
Yeah. That's true. So Dwayne, you obviously mentioned that you was a drummer. I know within the prosperity gospel and the NAR, worship music is a bit of a Trojan horse, right, for a lot of these movements to be able to get into people's front rooms. Tell us a little bit about that.
So, that's the thing, man. when I grew up in the church, it was the old school Baptist, basic songs.
Yeah.
When I made it to the mega church, you're talking about lights and smoke and all of that, man. So they know the influence of music, and that's why it's like when I tell you it's production style, like it's a concert. And so when you bring that quality and that sound and all of that, it's way easier to get sucked into it, So it don't matter if you're talking about, Sloppy Wet Kiss, which is disgusting every time I heard they sing that song. Or if you're talking about, whatever it may be. But if you have the, like a Israel Houghton with a full band and a full sound, and or Hillsong, we always talk about Hillsong. When you have that kind of quality, it's so easy to just sway people. And that's why they play music when they do their quote unquote altar calls, because it sways people. Music will lead you in a certain direction. And so to be a part of that, man, to be a part of that big production, because the band, we rehearsed like, we were playing for Prince. Like we rehearsed during the week. We had a run through before service. We had a quick run through between services. So it was really high on the quality side, and that like you said, it's a driving force and allows the terrible doctrine to creep in, because you're already susceptible after hearing, songs that aren't biblical.
Yeah. I am so thankful I've never heard the song Sloppy Wet Kiss before.
It's a line in the song called He Loves Us.
Right.
Heaven meets earth like a sloppy wet kiss. Something. I don't know. I hated that song.
Pray for me, Dwayne. I feel like I'm going to be tempted to look this up on Spotify after this interview, and I'm hoping I don't. So it doesn't sound good.
So here's the thing: the chorus, which is repetitive, and that's the whole thing is repeating, is He loves us. Oh, how He loves us. He loves us. Oh, how He loves us. Which I agree that He loves us, but it's the other stuff.
Yeah, no, of course. So when you was back there, what did a Sunday morning look like from a teaching point of view, in terms of what was a preaching like, and also outside of a church service, what did sort of like discipleship look like as well?
So they made attempts. They had small groups. They had campus pastors, and whatever auxiliary you were a part of, there was quote unquote a pastor over that auxiliary that you kind of partnered with, or studied with. And as far as the teaching was strategic, as far as the message, because it has to point to the offering. It also was recycled. I remember when I figured out, he was doing one of TD Jakes' sermons. Like he did a TD Jakes. TD Jakes did this skit before his sermon, and the pastor at this church did the exact same skit. I remember when I found it, I was like, "Oh my gosh, he's just stole the man thing." But it's all themed. It's not expository. It's a theme, and then it's I call it scriptural hopscotch. Skip through and find everything that points to whatever point you're trying to make. When it comes to the preaching. When it comes to the discipleship, like I said, it was not like real hardcore, let's be accountable, all of that, but it was, this person is in charge of making sure that you're cool. If you need to talk to somebody, come to him. Don't go to the big guy. So that's what that was about.
That's the danger with topical preaching, isn't it? When it's not expository, you can literally force the Bible to say whatever you want, right? By taking a little verse here and a little verse there out of context, right? Exactly.
That's what makes it so dangerous.
Yeah. Can you remember the time when you first heard the gospel and like you just realized that it was all real and that penny just dropped? Can you remember that time?
Ooh, that's hard, man. Okay, I think I remember, and this was interesting. I think when it all just kind of like, this is the gospel type thing. I remember one of my actual guys on the network, Terrence Barlow. He was doing a video, because he was doing the whole abortion clinic stuff, going out there and preaching the gospel to those ladies.
Yeah, yeah.
And he did a video on what the gospel was. And he proceeded to teach through scripture what the gospel actually is, opposed to, because growing up and being in church all your life, you hear the word gospel, but you don't know what it really is. They call everything else the gospel. But to actually hear the fact that we're dead in sin and we need a savior, and he came and he died and he rose so that he took our place. I mean, actually hear that breakdown came from my homeboy Terrence Barlow, T. Barlow, and that was probably about 7 or 8 years ago.
So cool. When did you first get interested in podcasting?
So the interest to do it myself came probably about 6 years ago. After, like I told you, when I started listening to the Grace to You and the Truth for Life and those guys, great preaching. I found RefNet, the app, and then through RefNet, I found Al Mohler and other guys, and so that's when I started to look at podcasting. And I think the first one I started listening to was Christ the Centered, which is a podcast on theology, real deep guys. And then I discovered a podcast called The Reform Pub, Les and Tanner, and they were pretty much talking about theology and beer and having a good time doing it. And that was like, wait a minute, I can do that. That's when I got interested, man. Because it was like, before that podcast, everything else was kind of ivory tower. These guys, just real smart guys that studied, all these years, all of that. But when I heard somebody actually have a good time and laugh and have trivia questions and things like that, that's what inspired me to start one.
Sounds so good. So what did you practically do to get your one off the ground?
Oof, man. So originally the podcast was supposed to be me and my team. I had a team of people that I had been kind of co-laboring with on the internet. We were supposed to do like this round table, discussion on current events. And as you know, like I do, brother, it's hard to get two people on the line at the same time. Imagine trying to get five. So we would do a show and it'd fall apart. We'd do a show, it'll fall apart. And then I went to this app called Sermon Audio, and it said Steve Lawson was in the area that I was in, living in. And so I went to that sermon, and right behind me was Todd Friel. And so after the service, I said, hey, Todd, I'm thinking about doing a podcast. And he encouraged me so much to do it. And so after that, I was so encouraged and so excited. I told my team, I was like, hey, listen, I know y'all busy. I'm not going to stress y'all. Y'all do what you need to do. I'm going to start the podcast. I'm going to just interview people, and then when you're ready, we'll go from there. And so that's what it took for the B.A.R to take off, man. And, sending out invitations, getting people on the show, and recording and just kind of finding my groove, man. That's kind of the steps we took to get where we are. Yeah,
wow. You've conducted so many interviews. I'm really interested. What have been your favourites, apart from when you interviewed me the other day? And and also, what are your funniest memories so far?
Oh, man. So, yours is definitely my favorite. So I was kidding. you might be top 10, man. Top 10. No, I always tell people it's hard for me to pick a favorite podcast. To me, that's like saying, which kid is your favorite. Because I love all of them. I enjoyed all of them. I'll tell you two that, three that challenged me. One was Mark Dever. That's a classic episode. He literally punched me in the gut right over the air. I mean, I was asking him about helping me with a friend that was agnostic, and then he literally stopped and prayed. He said, "Lord, I pray that Dwayne get as passionate about his friend that's lost as he is this podcast." And it was like,
Wow.
punch in the gut.
Wow.
The next one was Rosario Butterfield, and she was talking about the gospel has a house key and inviting people in her house and evangelizing, and how if nobody invited her into their house, she probably wouldn't be a Christian. And then I responded, it was like, well, I'm a country guy and I got guns and I believe in security and this and that. And then she was like, so you're not going to put that aside. You don't trust God enough to invite somebody into your home. And it was like, another punch in the
yeah. I'm just, as you're talking, Dwayne, I'm just crossing these people off on my list as we speak. So that's good.
Yeah. Good idea.
Yeah.
and the last one was is Pastor Josh Bice from G3, and he didn't say anything particular that punched me in the chest, but every time he gets on, he just really pounds hard on making sure you're connected to a local body and local church. And that's always something. Every time he get on my show, man, I leave feeling like, okay, I got to make sure I'm plugged in and connected. So as far as the funniest moment, two funniest moments. I hope I'm not being long-winded, but I am a podcaster. So I don't get to talk much.
Yeah, no, you do. It's good.
So one funny moment, it never made it to the air, but I had, finally got Steve Lawson locked down to come on the show, and his assistant gave him the wrong date to come on the show, and so he called. I don't know if you got a chance to hear the waiting music on my
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Yeah, so he called, man, and was waiting on me, and I had no idea. And luckily, we worked it out, and I was able to get him. But man, when I got him on the phone, he was like, "Man, that darn waiting music almost drove me crazy."
How long was he there for? 2 days.
I don't even know, man. I felt so bad. I was like, "Yo, like we're not supposed to be. It's tomorrow, And he was cool, but he said that waiting music almost just gave up. He wasn't even going to fool with me, man. So that was pretty funny. And then also, anytime I have Joe Thorne and Jimmy Fowler on the show from Docking and Devotion, they keep me laughing. I mean, they keep me laughing.
Yeah.
Off the air. Joe texts and call and say random stuff, and my stomach be hurting from laughing.
Brilliant. One of the things that I love about you, Dwayne, is you're a real entrepreneur. You're so creative, but you're really kingdom focused with your entrepreneurial skills as well, because you haven't only got your own podcast, you've got like your own network going on with other podcasts involved as well. Tell us a little bit about that and how that all got started.
Yeah, so if you remember the team that I was talking about, that I couldn't get together, well, I finally got them together. So we came up with the idea, if they had podcast ideas, I would I would bring them, I would build the platform and then give them a place to put their show. And so that's how we had the idea of the network way back then, before there was network publicly. So that's how I got started. Once we put it out there that we were a network, we got approached by a podcast, and we grilled them pretty hard, and we pulled their tax ID. No, I'm just kidding. We do all that, but we did grill them pretty hard. And we let them in, and then after that, man, I just kind of went on I don't know if your audience familiar with the 90s, mid 90s to late 2000 record label called Rockefeller with Jay-Z and those guys. I just kind of went on a Rockefeller spiel where I just find somebody I like, and then invited them to be a part of the network. So right now we have let's see. Let me see if I can name them real quick.
Yeah, do it. Good. Go on.
So we have the B.A.R podcast, which is mine. We have B.A.R's Biblical Reform Spitters, which is my man T. Barlow. He talks about music and hip hop. We have Just Thinking, which is that is probably the hottest one on the network right now. Just past 500,000 downloads. Daryl and Virgil, they handle current events from biblical worldview. We have Pastors Discussion, John Hawk, just two pastors talking about life and ministry. We have Guys with Bibles, Scott, Lee, and Sean, literally walking through scripture. We have Truth and Fire, the podcast, with my girl Constance, and we have Solarcast with Jim, Chris, and Henry, bringing the Hispanic Latino arena. You know, one of them is a pastor. They talk about just random events.
Yeah.
Then we have Thankful Homemaker. My good friend Miss Marcy.
Yeah.
She's just a sweet lady. Just talk about being a homemaker and glorifying God while doing it. I think that's everybody. Is that everybody? I think that's everybody, man.
Mate, that's a lineup. That's a lineup.
That's 8 podcasts.
Yeah, that is so cool, mate. You know one thing though, right? You've got a real weak spot in it. You haven't got like a really cool middle-aged British guy on there.
I agree with you there. I need that on my team, man. You know any?
Just in case anybody's listening who might have a podcast, how does it work? Like, are you open for people to reach out to you to get on board with you, or how does that kind of process work?
So really, I have to feel it, man. I don't mind you reaching out, but it has to feel right for me. God has blessed me with a beautiful gift called instincts, and that has gotten me this far in the podcast game. And I can sense, when it's a good podcast idea, or I can sense when it may be not a good podcast idea, and I have a good sense of, this is something you can maintain, and because I'm really in it for the long run, man. I want people that are in it for the long run. So I don't mind the invitation. I don't mind people asking, inquiring, and I'll take a look, and I may look away, and then, one day I see something, it's like, oh, okay. Yeah. So it's really just, my instincts is how I go about finding somebody to join. You're
very generous with your experience as well, because obviously, you're one of the experienced sort of guys who's been doing this for a while, leading the way. I know that you kind of consult and coach and support, and you're always, always open to give people feedback. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So like you said, man, I love doing that. And the reason why I like doing that is because when I started, nobody did it for me.
Yeah.
I asked a lot of people about what mic, what software you use, what, but nobody really responded, or if they did, it almost was like, I'm not giving you my secret. I'm not going to let you in the door. And so when God blessed me to do it all wrong so I can tell you how to do it right. I decided that, freely he gave to me, so freely I'm going to give to anybody else. When it comes to just you can hit me up for any kind of information. I don't mind sharing it. Just recently I started wanting to clean it up and be professional and actually offer it as a service. With the price, of course, with the charge. But I definitely, still, like, I have a soft spot for people. So even if I'm like, sign up for a consultant, this much an hour, and then you hit me, it was like, so I just want to know this, and I'll just tell you, man.
You end up paying them.
Right.
You mentioned earlier that you're in this for the long term. What I mean, obviously God is sovereign and it's all, God willing, but in terms of you and how you can influence what's going on, what are your hopes long term? What are you hoping, is the future for you guys?
Sure, man. So this has been my answer since I started. I don't have this big, like, grand scheme of, the super podcast, or, this is what I do for a living. Sure, that would be awesome. But honestly, long term, I just hope that every Tuesday when you grab your device and look at your phone, that you have a B.A.R podcast new episode. That's long term dream. That's my long-term goal, is to be consistent, giving you good content until Jesus come back or something else happens.
What resources have helped you grow as a Christian so far?
Man, so I probably named them 3 times already. Ligonier, Table Talk Magazine, Grace to You, all of the sort resources they have, the app, True for Life, and just being able to follow and great men of God that are saying great things. All of that stuff has helped in my growth. Partnering with great ministries like that has helped my growth. And then on more personal, there's a small group that I'm a part of that also helps my spiritual growth, being accountable to a group. I'm actually getting ready to relocate, so I'm not quote unquote technically part of a local body right now, because I'll be moving to another state next month, and so I'm hoping and praying that we can actually finally find a good church home and dig our feet in and be connected to.
Wow. Hold on 2 seconds, Dwayne. I'm just going to quickly message Josh Boyce right now and tell him about what you just said. 2 seconds. Okay, I'm back. He's not happy. He'll
be calling me.
Yeah. The reason why I asked you 3 times what your favourite resources was is because you haven't actually mentioned Exposit the word yet, Dwayne. I've been subtly hinting.
Oh my God.
You
still new, man. You still new. No. Let me back up there, because I have to give you a shout out, brother. Because listen. I don't put people on my show that I don't either believe in or trust. Yeah. And Exposit the Word is slowly going to add to my list of
Nice.
Something that I go to readily. Yeah. I think I told you this in the inbox. The small group that I mentioned, we do a Bible study, and we're in the Book of John. And one of the members of the group posted John, I think it was John 2, with R.C. Sproul preaching it. And I was like, oh, okay, John 2. But we were actually in 3. Yeah. I was like, I wonder if this same YouTube channel have 3. And I went to the channel and was like, wait a minute, they have almost every book in it. And so I listened to John 3, man, came in that next Friday, man. I was just dropping all kind of nuggets that I had stole from RC, sounding real smart. But no, man, it is, what you're doing is a blessing, man. Yeah. And I'm definitely encouraged by it. I've shared your YouTube channel with some folks and already. And so, what's next for you, man? You got to get an app. You got to have an app that are linked to those or something. We got to get you out there. Yeah,
100%. That's a really good idea. That would be something I'd love to do. I love the idea of you verbatim just going into your small group, like copying RC's bro, to the point where you're even going, what's wrong with you people?
I think they would recognize that.
Yeah, that's true. So, man, this has been so fun, Dwayne. Really loved hanging out with you, mate. One last question. So, if anyone's been listening to us talk and hearing your story over the last sort of half an hour, 40 minutes, and they're wondering who this Jesus is that you're talking about, what would you encourage them to do, Dwayne? How break down the gospel for them and tell them why Jesus is so important?
Well, the reason I love to tell people about Jesus, and the reason why he's so important is because without him, you're lost. Yeah. You're a sinner. Yeah. You are separated from the God creator, the one true living God. And this Jesus came down over 2,000 years ago, lived the perfect life, which is very important. And then died and rose again. But when he died not only just to die, but he died for your sins. He actually took the punishment that you deserve. He took it to the grave and rose with the keys of the kingdom, with all power in his hand. And now he's sitting at the right hand of the Father, interceding for you. And that is the gospel, that God himself came in the flesh, walked the earth, took your sins, paid the price, resurrected, and now waiting for his great return. And we all say, come quickly, Lord, come quickly. Yeah,
thank you, Dwayne. That's excellent. Dwayne, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Man, just call me at 9. I'm just kidding. No, the best way is just go to the barpodcast.com. You can find the podcast. You can hit the tab and hear all those other wonderful podcasts with the B.A.R network. And then on Instagram and Twitter, It's Dwayne 21. So my name will be DAWAIN, the number 21. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter. Don't send me a Facebook request because I don't know you, and Facebook is for family, but still love you.
Dwayne, you're giving away your age there, with your handle, 21. You're looking good, mate.
Oh.
Yeah.
I wish. That was my favorite sports number. That's the number I wore in high school.
Oh, you wasn't born in 1921 then, no?
Yeah, no, not 1921. I'm not 21 years old, but I like the number 21.
Yeah, excellent. Dwayne, thank you so much for your time, buddy. I really enjoyed it.
Same here, brother. Thank you.
Thank you.